Hello, and welcome to Aviation Deep Dive. The Finnish in the Second World War found themselves in a difficult situation. Fighting a numerically superior enemy that also had the industry to develop and mass-produce aircraft, the Finns often had very limited numbers of imported designs that had been purchased before the war. Many of these aircraft, such as the Bristol Blenheim and French MS-406, could not be replaced due to the political alliance that Finland had formed with Britain and France's enemies. This wasn't initially as much of a problem, as combat during the Winter War with the Soviets would often just see them facing fairly low-performance designs, such as the I-16 or I-15. Still, at the beginning of hostilities, the Finns fielded just 114 aircraft against 2,500 on the Soviet side, and still somehow managed to score a 9-to-1 kill-to-loss ratio. During the Winter War, the Soviets had extreme difficulties in the skies, taking very heavy casualties while scarcely being able to down a single Finn for every 10 of theirs that they lost. This success, however, was not to last. The Winter War was over, but as newer and faster Soviet designs entered service, the antiquated fighters in Finnish service simply wouldn't cut it, and war was brewing once again. With the German invasion of the Soviet Union, Finland would join the fight just 3 days later, in an attempt to recover the territory they had lost during the Winter War. Achieving initial success in the air, as the war progressed, more modern Soviet and Lend-Lease fighters began to appear on the battlefield. LA-5s, American P-39s, and Yak-9s became a common sight, all of which was significantly newer than the Gladiators, Fokkers, and MS-406s, which made up the main fighting force for the Finns. Taking delivery of more modern types from its German allies, Bf-109Gs would be put to great use by the Finns, but numbers remained an issue, and a chronic shortage of equipment meant that they simply could not afford to retire older aircraft from service. They needed every fighter they had. It was decided the older MS-406s no longer cut it in combat, but that perhaps they could with a few modifications. The sheer number of Soviet aircraft shot down over Finnish territory meant that they had a lot of salvageable engines and other parts to work with, and not enough aircraft to mount them in. Finnish aircraft designer Arne Lacoma was put in charge of a program to investigate an upgrade path for the old French fighters, and see if it was viable. Given a single airframe to work with, Lacoma got to work and immediately set about replacing the engine. As it happened, the Klimov M105P engine, of which the Finns had no shortage of due to all the Soviet aircraft downed over Finnish territory, was a perfect fit for the 406. Not only was it essentially a Soviet upgrade of the French Hispano-Suiza engine already in the aircraft, but it retained the ability to mount a cannon shooting through the cylinder banks and propeller shaft, meaning that the central gun wouldn't have to be relocated. Superseding the old Hispano-Suiza 860 horsepower engine with the far more powerful Klimov, which could produce up to 1,100 horsepower, the result was a whopping 25% increase in power. The cowling was also refined aerodynamically, along with structural improvements to accommodate the added weight. Then, attention was turned towards the firepower of the fighter. The original armament of 2 wing-mounted light machine guns and a single drum-fed 20mm cannon firing through the propeller shaft had been okay in the late 1930s, but simply didn't cut it by 1942. The MG-151 cannon fielded by the Germans was far superior to the French cannon in the aircraft, being belt-fed, which allowed a higher ammunition capacity, and firing the infamous mine shell, a cannon shell with thinner wall casings and far more explosive filler packed inside. Both the MG-151 and the Soviet 12.7mm Berezin machine gun, of which the Finns had no shortage of, were tried, and ultimately both were considered acceptable options and mounted to the aircraft, simply depending on which was available. Some testing revealed that the new Klimov engine put out far too much heat for the aircraft's cooling system to handle, so a 109's radiator was essentially taken and simply bolted to the bottom of the aircraft and rigged up to the piping, which apparently solved the issue. Development had not been speedy, however, Delays in available resources and overworked factories meant that the first modified MS-406 would not fly until January 1943. Once it did, however, it became clear that the Finns were onto something. The impressive attempt to create a Frankenstein fighter, bolted together from whatever parts were readily available, and however effectively the Finnish mechanics could get it running, was a great success. The aircraft retained its good handling characteristics, being fairly stable, but had supercharged performance. Going over 60 km per hour faster at sea level, the service ceiling was increased by 3,000 meters, whilst the climb rate was also greatly improved. Lacoma presented the aircraft, dubbed Mörkö-Morane, meaning to the authorities, who immediately gave the green light for mass conversions to begin. The process wouldn't exactly be speedy though. Lacking significant industry to back production, the aircraft had to be modified one by one, and it was a fairly long process. By the end of the continuation war in September 1944, only 3 Mörkös had been completed, all delivered to the 28th Fighter Regiment. After the protracted development, at least all 3 would see combat, in the hands of none other than Lars Hattinen, the youngest Finnish ace of the war. And yet even at this stage, with just 1 pilot at their controls and a couple years late, it still made its mark. In the final weeks of the war, Lars was able to down 2 P-39s and a Yak during closing weeks of the war. 1 kill with each of the Mörkös delivered to the squadron, which perhaps speaks volumes about the effectiveness of the design. The Finnish should be able to convert an old, obsolete design into a first-rate fighter with good speed, maneuverability, and weaponry. A success in virtually any metric, this would in fact be the only air-to-air combat the Mörkö would ever see, as the war with the Soviets ended before the aircraft could make any real impact or get produced in significant numbers. They would, however, go on to be used in some reconnaissance and ground attack missions during the Lapland War, when the Finnish turned on Nazi Germany and expelled them out of their territory. But this would be the last real combat use they saw. Regardless, the fighter would continue to see conversions throughout the following years, until the program halted in March 1945, after 41 Mörkös had been converted. Serving as trainers until the late 1940s, by 1952 every single one had been sent to the scrapyard, and tragically, not a single example survives to this day. The Mörkö-Morane was a Frankenstein fighter, pieced together with whatever equipment the Finnish could gather together, and was born out of a necessity to make the absolute most out of everything they had. And yet, despite these conditions, they managed to produce an excellent aircraft, better than the original in virtually all respects, and one that could go toe-to-toe with fighters developed half a decade after it had first flown. A hallmark of Finnish ingenuity and efficiency, it's simply a shame that one was not preserved for us to see today. Thank you so much for watching this video of Aviation Deep Dive. Consider liking and subscribing for more weekly content, and please also consider supporting us on Patreon. See you in the skies.